In the last video, we talked about browsers and servers and how they interact with each other with the client-server model to present web pages. It's just like how your browser is showing you this video on the JomaClass website right now. Like I said before, a browser is nothing special. It's just an app or a program that can turn code into a web page. It takes in the funny looking source code and shows it to you so that it looks like a decent web page. The three file types that were mentioned in the last video were HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In this video, we'll dive a bit deeper into HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. An HTML document defines the overall content and structure of a web page. When you visit a web page on your browser, the HTML source code is downloaded onto your computer. Then, your browser reads the source code, interprets it, and shows you the web page elements on the screen. When I say elements of a web page, it just means the stuff you see or interact with. Do you see the play button on this video? That's an element. You see the menu bar on top? That's also an element. This video itself is an element. Everything you see on this web page is an element. And sometimes an element can consist of several other elements, like the menu bar. The menu itself is an element, but inside of it, it contains smaller elements like the JomaClass logo, the courses menu, your profile picture, etc. And the HTML document, not only does it tell the browser what to show, it also tells it how to show it, like what order or position each element should take. But what is a markup language? If HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, it should be some sort of a markup language, right? So let's first see what a markup language is. Look at this example. The words with surrounding angle brackets are called tags. Typically, tags come in pairs, consisting of an opening tag, which signifies the beginning of an element, and a closing tag to tell us that it's the end. The entire section from an opening tag to a closing tag will define a single element. In this code, the outermost tag has a director label, which is called a root tag. Inside, we can find information about that director. So that director's name is James Cameron, who was born in 1954 and had produced two movies, Titanic in 1997 and Avatar in 2009. But of course, he directed way more movies than that. So this would be an example of a markup that describes a director. You can come up with your own tags and use them to describe something else. For example, if you want to describe a recipe, you would make customized tags like prepare, ingredients, or instruction. This style of code is called a markup language. In old times, when we were publishing documents without computers, the editors would be people holding a blue pen writing instructions on how to present raw text. For example, they would write down things like, make this title bigger, or put this in bold letters. That process was called marking up, and it was a common publishing practice. Later on, when we started to use computers, this blue writing was replaced with tags, but it still served a similar purpose, which is why we still use the term markup. So markup language is essentially a human-readable computer language that defines elements and stores information using tags. So now let's get back to HTML. The Hypertext Markup Language is a type of markup language that is used for creating and structuring web pages. It contains many predefined tags. Each one has a specific purpose and defines a different HTML element. For instance, the HTML tag tells the browser to interpret what's inside of it as HTML elements. The title tag defines the title of the web page and will be shown in the browser's title bar when the web page is loaded. And the P tag, which stands for paragraph, will simply display a text paragraph on the web page. There are lots and lots of tags that you can use in HTML. You don't need to know all of them, but make sure you are able to search for tags that you need in the documentation or in any other resource that you're comfortable with. Here in this HTML code example, you can see some new things that weren't there in the previous example. First of all, what is this line? The doctype.html. It looks like a tag, but it's actually a statement. This is known as the document type declaration, and it usually contains information about the type and version of HTML that the web page is written with. This single line simply means that the web page is written in HTML5. Other types include HTML 4.01, which is a predecessor of HTML5, and XHTML, whose X stands for extensible and is essentially a stricter version of HTML, but we won't talk about them here. Just letting you know that there are several other types of HTMLs. Moving on, you may have noticed that some opening tags contain extra information, like inside of the link, image, and a tags. These are called the attributes of a tag, and this is where you give more information about that element. An attribute always has a name-value pair. Let's look at the img tag, which stands for image, and tells a browser to embed an image into the web page. We use the src attribute, meaning source, to specify what image file to show, and the width and height attribute specifies the dimension of the image when it's displayed on the browser. On the other hand, the A tag stands for anchor, and it's used to define a hyperlink that you can click on and go to another web page. Its hypertext reference attribute, href, tells the browser where to go when the hyperlink is clicked. There are also some elements that only have an opening tag. These are called void elements. Usually, an element contains an opening tag, some content, then it's followed by a closing tag. But these void elements don't need a closing tag to make sense to the browser. For example, the BR tag, the break tag, simply tells the browser to put a line break, and so it wouldn't need a closing tag. The link tag is simply importing an external resource such as a CSS style sheet or a JavaScript library, so in that case, it won't need a closing tag. But instead, it will need to have an attribute telling the browser what it is and where to get the resource from. In this video, we talked about HTML, and in the next video, we will talk about the Document Object Model, DOM, and see how the browser handles all the elements. See you in the next one.